And welcome back to the show. I am now with Erinrose Sullivan. It's such a huge honor. Erinrose comes from America and she's one of our Swiss pride because she chose our country to stay. She's one of the greatest experts in gaming and marketing, had a long experience at EA Games. She's also very proactive in the Swiss digital industry with Pro Helvetia and other instances. And myself, I was supported and helped by her as an expert and a mentor, maybe about 9 years ago, when I was working on Ma Vie de Courgette Transmedia. And it's always a pleasure and beautiful to work with her. And now she works with So Real. So So Real is a digital double company. And maybe I would like to ask a first question, Erinrose, connecting with the previous panel, which was about NFT.
Yeah.
So we saw recently a company in Geneva selling a watch as a digital double NFT. And it was basically a picture of the watch. So is this what you're doing?
That is exactly what we are not doing. Actually, the term digital twins being thrown around quite liberally right now. So there's actually a lot of work behind the scenes of like, okay, let's consolidate again around the definition of a digital twin. And a digital twin is really, as was spoken about earlier, is taking the actual object and making a virtual version of it, including actually the passerelle, or the sort of link between the two with real-time information. Mm-hmm. So it's really a three-dimensional object in a immersive experience for VR, AR, web viewer that can be interacted with. So it's not exactly a JPEG. JPEGs are important, but they're not digital twins.
I understand, but so now in the latest iPhone models, we have those LiDAR scanners. So. Yes. I actually was able to scan my entire apartment with it. So how close and similar is what we can do today with an iPhone and what your company is doing right now?
I would say it raises awareness. I think that's really good to have these things that people see the possibilities.
Right.
It's a little bit gimmicky, but again, that's important in these processes, to have that experience of saying, oh, I can try it, now it brings understanding. It's sort of a level further with this technology. We take existing technologies with CT scanning and actually take the objects and put them through a CT scanning system to actually get the inside, the outside of the object that allows for immersive experiences, interactions, and engagement.
So the level of rendering you have is completely different.
Yes, it's we talk about the levels of design.
Right.
In fact, when you capture an object in this manner, you have so much information that, for example, for a museum, you have the sort of like the CCO version that goes into cold storage that you don't touch. And then you have sort of like the working version. Like, so we create these versions that are like 500 megabytes, 1 gigabyte of information on one object that can be stored for all time.
Wow, so on the screen, this is one of your renders?
Yes, so this is a Hydria vase, which is part of a project through Horizon 2020 called Nature. So it was all around repatriation of objects and destruction of objects recaptured again.
So those digital doubles, those digital twins you're making, they have many applications, right? So you talked about museums, this is one thing, but in filmmaking, in virtual production, where we are using on one hand like motion capture to capture people, thanks to your technology, you can actually do the entire props and all the entire design for the films, right?
Exactly. What's increasingly, as we've seen in this period in 2020, a lot of the entertainment film crews, sort of everything had to shut down with people involved. But there has just been this uptake in all things digital for it, and the recreation happening in Vietnam for filmmaking. And it's leaning in now to the technology we have available. So our objects being able to interact with, creating scenes where, even films, if we say films or even sort of gamified experiences where you'd be using the Epic MetaHuman and the Unreal 5 engine, like we're going into a space where it's the hyper real is happening, where digitized objects, are a natural part of that space.
Reconnecting again with NFT, do you see a future where at some point those digital objects might even have more value than the physical object?
This is a little bit the great unknown right now. Like I would say, yeah, right now it's the gold rush. everyone's experimenting. It's quite interesting in the space of museums and cultural heritage because they've spent their whole lives are protecting what they have and not necessarily sharing it. That's sort of, like in French, it's protéger, pas partager. And this has been, pulling and screaming into the digital age for museums right now. But at the same time, it's been a loss of revenues to help them during this period, and trying to find ways to shift and transform digitally. It's quite complicated. And then the idea to then maybe take pieces like Uffizi, I think we used last week with Chinello, took one of their pieces, turned it into an NFT and sold it for 170,000. I think there'll be more and more examples of that, but again, it's that protection that's happening. As we've seen with artists, their websites are being scraped by people that can create NFTs quickly, and they're making money off them. So there's going to be a great fear and that security. So there's going to have to be, as was talked about earlier, that confidence has to be built, but really behind confidence has to be like the actual cybersecurity in that space too. So it's a little bit still the unknown for museums. I think there's going to be a side where you almost like the posters that you could get, that it could be a digital version of that. And that you can purchase, so there'll be the digital objects you can purchase that way, but then there'll be the limited edition, the kind of NFT version, there'll be like maybe 10,
right.
And that goes on a blockchain. So I think that's where we'll be sort of moving towards slowly but surely.
I see. And the best way to see your works is in an immersive space, I guess, because what you do is in volume, so the best way to experience it is in a medium which allows it, right?
Absolutely. That and augmented reality.
Right.
We have a tool to show, an app to show these things in augmented reality. The challenge right now as well is you have to go to the platforms where people are. So you have Spark AR, but the objects you can make are 4 megabytes. So you're really reducing something to when you talk about something that really has incredible depth and
right.
It can allow for interactivity, it can do so many things. It has to almost the lowest common denominator for the masses, and that's important. It creates inclusiveness, but it might not be able to show, the depth and breadth of something that has that level of depth and breadth.
So the solution to have portability and full resolution would be maybe cloud rendering and development of 5G, for instance, or?
Yeah, going that way, and allowing, like I was saying, the big pipes to allow for, greater depth for the objects.
And when do you foresee that happen? A world where we're able to have a portable device filled with objects of your quality in full resolution? How far do you think we are from that?
Right now, you're seeing a lot of sort of, I don't want to call it gimmicky, but it's a little bit gimmicky with AR. I think AR is personally, I think it's the first frontier because we all have mobile phones in our hands. And we are all, if you look at, we're driven by the technology that we have. And our mobile phones change, every 18 to 24 months. So it is the technology that has the quickest turnaround that, versus video games, next-gen console versus like a VR headset, which is getting more and more installed base. But, we're nowhere near something like an Xbox, a PlayStation, a Nintendo Switch. So you have to think of touching the mainstream. What do they have? They have their mobile phones. It's changing every 18 months. Right now, for an AR experience, there's still a block because you're lifting something and you've got this barrier.
Right, yeah.
So what is interesting is these new lenses that are coming along. Snap has continued to develop these. Everyone's, in their corner. It's no longer like the Google Glass of, yesteryear. I think that starts to really be that passerelle between the virtual
right.
and the, that augmented is, of my opinion, is going to be the place where we'll start more before we go fully into a virtual, because you don't have a cutoff in the way you do with virtual.
But with the Oculus Quest, for instance, from Facebook, we start to have a pretty compelling platform, a pretty strong pipeline of distribution. Are you already working with, for instance, game developers or experienced developers who are working on Quest, for instance, to fill their universe with the objects you would make?
Yeah, we are, and we work with, we have strategic partnerships with Unity. Can't talk about certain partnerships we're working with, but that are sort of pushing the boundaries. In gaming, it's interesting because if you look at the Unity store, it's quite hobbyist. It's 90% hobbyists that go there. Unreal is probably has probably not the same level of hobbyists are on there, but still with major game makers, they're doing so much in-house. Now, about 6 years ago, DICE from EA did Battlefield Starfront,
Yes.
and they had to create they used photogrammetry for a lot of their scenes. In their analysis, if they had considered like the cost of the process put in place, taking that out of the equation, it cost them about 30% what it would have cost having had made the scenes themselves. So we're going to see more and more of that incorporation of capture, because as we get more hyper-real now, people will talk, but if it's going to be more of like an anime type style, yeah, that'll still exist. And of course, you're going to want designers for this. But Xbox, PlayStation, it's going towards the hyper-real. I mean, if you look at these scenes now, if you looked at the Unreal 5 engine, you have to look twice to imagine that realize it's not real.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we saw that Unreal bot capturing reality, we really see this interest for having tangible elements coming to the virtual world.
Absolutely.
So I have one last question before we give the floor to the audience. So, I mean, you worked in China, in the US, you could have been in any company, but you are in Switzerland here, and Switzerland is an innovative country. And do you think, is it easier or more challenging for a Swiss company like Sorreal to take over the world, which was in the US? Do you think it's harder, it's easier, what are the...
I would say, everyone knows if you're in the Silicon Valley, things just move. It's the speed, it's the dynamic, things are different that way. We've been a little bit, that's no surprise to you, we've been a little bit slower in Switzerland. The tendency is slower generally in Switzerland. But it's great to see I've been working independently with numerous companies over the past 8 years, even to see what's been happening at the EPFL, over 150 startups, to start to see more and more investment groups that are helping. Like we need that strong ecosystem within Switzerland to support that. And we actually need we need more unicorns, we need things more growing to actually then sort of feed the system again. You kind of need to feed the beast. In Switzerland, the education leads to great exploration. The schools are really supportive for that. A little bit more the challenge is sort of the mindset towards entrepreneurial spirit, but I think it's increasing, and I think there's more of an openness. There's still steps to go, but there's that sort of like that push and pull here with things.
Well, in Crans-Montana, where it's known to be a touristic destination first, we've been pushing with the help of the commune, Yves Ray who's here, like the implementation of startups here. And I must say, when I brought the entire team who worked from here, it did feel, but I would say in an improved way, a Google campus, but the entire village, not just a one office block. So because you need a dynamic, you need that energy, you need the kind of that interaction, the sort of challenge between groups. That stimulates, you need sort of external stimulus to propel forward and to help create that, if it means artificial, like creating a dynamic for that, that's like, it's important in everything. If it's important in this development, even for artists, that's why you have like art communities where you get stimulated by another artist and seeing what they're doing, as well as the environment around you. Excellent. And also we mentioned before, we have a great relationship with China, and I think Mathieu said in the NFT panel that Chinese are really interested to have their whole patrimoine, their legacy in digital doubles. So hopefully Philippe can help make the connections, and we can have Sorreal really helping China to take the leap and showing their amazing culture.
They go, 文化遗产. Yes, exactly. Helping them with that would be 非常好.
Thank you very much. So is there any questions from the audience to Erinrose?
Thank you very much. Very, very exciting. You correctly said digital twin doesn't have a unique definition, at least depending on which context. People have slightly different flavors of it. I'm curious to know, in your definition and your roadmap, do you see the digital twin, what you scan in the best way you can, even in volumetric and even constituency and even what materials are, also live the same journey, so they get updated the same way the physical objects get updated? This question is probably also related to the IoT, right? Because these physical objects can have all sorts of IoTs associated with them. Is that a roadmap you're following?
Yeah, that is a roadmap we're following. We're talking with partners in England, even like an electrical grid can't do testing, live testing. So creating the virtual version, the digital version, allows you, and you can feed in real-time data into it. So absolutely. And this is where that's sort of like industrial application for digital twins, is sort of like a vertical that we have beyond fashion, beyond museums and cultural heritage, but a very concrete that allows for that testing and tweaking of their processes. Yeah.
For that, we need some very big tube for data, like 5G or other technology, because today we have also perhaps a fiber at home or at work, but we need more data live. So we need to also expand this network for success.
Yes, which will be out of our control, but yes, we need more juice.
We have Swisscom in the room, so I think you got the message. Great, thank you so much, Erinrose. Also, Nelson Kufus, who does digital twins, but at the real estate level, was supposed to be with us, but he was unfortunately sick. So you'll have his presentation online. Thank you, Erinrose, and congratulations. It's amazing, your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.